Hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. I'm Nick Palavito. I'll be your host for today. And I just got back from Istanbul late last night. And when I was there, of course, it's upside down. You can see David Walker had a store there. And so I had to go into the David Walker store in Istanbul and pick up some David Walker perfume. Can you believe that? They have David Walker perfume in Istanbul. So I didn't know he had a store there, but it's a pretty nice store. It's very upscale. If you're ever in Istanbul, you go down the main street, you'll be able to find it. Okay, but today we're actually going to be talking about two very important topics. One is the national debt. The national debt we've talked about before, it's approaching 120% of GDP. So I'm in Turkey, I'm going, what's the national debt of Turkey? 30% of GDP, not 120%. So oddly enough, it's a little bit more stable in that regards, but inflation, what people don't know, the inflation in Turkey, 30%, where the United States, it's like 3%. 30%? Are you kidding me? Well, it's down from 50%. So when I was over in Turkey, I picked up a lot of these things called Turkish lira. See, that's 200. That's worth about $5 US. $50, that's worth about 50 cents. And the sad part is I'm holding my Turkish lira. The value of this will be 30% less by the end of the year. So inflation, 30%. And that's down from 50%. So it does have some problems. We're going to talk about inflation, the debt, and we're also going to talk about the dollar. The dollar has gone down in value, and that hurts moi and 5.5 million people that don't live in the United States because for whatever reason, your dollar is going this way. It used to be, I give them a US dollar, I get 90 cents back, sometimes 95 cents. Now I give them a US dollar, I get about like 73 cents back. That's not fun. So with that, we're going to be bringing a man who has a solution to the US dollar to make the dollar strong again. And that's the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States. And he's going to give us some advice on how we can make the dollar strong again. They keep saying, make America great again. Make the dollar strong again. Otherwise, our purchasing power is going down. And David, that does not make me happy at all because I make my money in the United States. I bring it here. And last year I had 90 cents on the dollar. Everything was cool. Now it's like 70 cents and going down. And same with the sterling. So what's going on in this country that forces the dollars to start going down? I mean, I don't want to get my US dollars over here and I get like 2 pennies for it. That's like ridiculous. So tell us what's going on. Why is the dollar going down? Will people be able to travel? What's going on over there?
Well, first, let me give you some introductory remarks about what's going on right now, and then we'll deal with the dollar issue. First, now that you've purchased the David Walker cologne, you will be a chick magnet. So just be prepared for that. Okay. I'm not sure if you purchased any of the David Walker attire, but that would put you on steroids, if you will. But look, there are two things that are going on short term that I want to mention. We can come back to, and then we'll address the issue that you raised. Two big things going on. One, we now have a partial shutdown of the U.S. government again. About 3/4 of the government agencies that are funded through discretionary spending, meaning they're not on autopilot, which includes the Department of Defense, which includes the Department of Homeland Security. That doesn't mean that the essential personnel don't continue to work. They do continue to work. They just don't get paid until there's funding. So that's one thing that's going on. Hopefully that will get resolved on Tuesday. The Democrats are wanting to extract changes to how ICE conducts its enforcement operations as a condition of voting for the Department of Homeland Security bill. They're likely to advance everything other than that and then give a couple of weeks to try to get that resolved. But just another example of how dysfunctional the Congress is. The last time they passed all the appropriations bills on time was 1996. And as I've said many times, the only express and enumerated responsibility they have to do every year under the Constitution is to pass all the appropriations bills, and they're just doing a terrible job of it. Secondly, the president announced a new Fed chair nominee, Kevin Warsh, Kevin has an undergraduate degree from Stanford, has a law degree from Harvard. Ironically, does not have an economics degree, but has a lot of background that's relevant to the Fed. He actually has been on the Fed board previously, appointed by George Walker Bush. He actually served in the George Walker Bush administration as an economics advisor. He has spent time at Morgan Stanley, I believe. And, the markets, in particular, the market for gold and silver has dropped dramatically, which is a little bit perplexing because he's not viewed as being tremendously hawkish, especially if he's nominated by President Trump, who obviously is very dovish with regard to rates. And in addition to that, the Fed doesn't control long-term rates. The long-term rates are controlled by auctions. The Fed only controls short-term rates. So it's really perplexing. The gold and silver took a big hit on Friday. They're still down today. Hopefully they'll stabilize soon. We'll see what happens. You talk about inflation. I have in front of me a $100 trillion Zimbabwe bill. Yes, I said 100 trillion. On Friday, they're still down today. We're running extremely large deficits. We continue to have mounting debt burdens that, GDP growth is up, but the deficit as a percentage of GDP is greater than the rate of growth in the economy. And so therefore debt to GDP continues to go up. There are not serious steps to try to be able to change course on that. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act resulted in significant reductions in projected revenues, some reductions in projected spending, but not enough to overcome the projected reductions in revenue. And so as a result, it's projected to result in an increase in debt to GDP as compared to what the situation was before that bill passed. We're still waiting to see what the GDP numbers will be for the fourth quarter. They were good for the third quarter. They were 4.4%. We did have a record 43-day government shutdown in the fourth quarter. You would think that would have an adverse effect on GDP growth, although some people are asserting, based upon the Federal Reserve of Atlanta's projections, that it actually may have gone up some more as compared to the 4.4%. We'll have to wait and see. Affordability is still a huge issue here in the United States. And it's going to be a major campaign issue for the midterm elections. But coming back to what you said about the dollar, the bottom line is we need to put our finances in order. And to put our finances in order, we're going to have a statutory fiscal commission, which I've been calling for a while. There is increasing bipartisan support for that, although I don't expect that there will be an actual vote on that until after the midterms for a variety of reasons. We're also going to need a constitutional amendment because that's the only thing that will bind current and future Congresses. Statutory approaches don't work. They don't stand the test of time. Only a constitutional requirement can get us to where we need to be. Interest on the debt this year is expected to actually be over $1 trillion, which is more than defense. It's also more than Medicare. And therefore, we also need to recognize, what do you get for interest? The answer is nothing, absolutely nothing. So that's an overview. Happy to go into more detail with others, and thanks for tuning in.
Okay, we're going to bring others on. By the way, I don't like this interest on the debt, David, because what you said, you don't get anything for it. And this is huge amount of money and huge problem. But there's some places we don't have such problems. Canada, which will bring in Sasha Starr. Bangladesh, we have Dr. Sharif. And of course, we do have some people from the United States who are showing up here. We have Jatovi, who's actually in Durham representing the U.S. And Kim has rejoined us from the United States of America, which the U.S. has their problem. Of course, David, the problem I have is the dollar. When the dollar declines in value, then people, Americans will spend more. It's almost like a tariff. You're going to spend more for goods that you buy overseas, and if you live overseas like I do, when the money comes over here, I get less for my dollar. So my question is, why is the dollar going down? Some of the investments I plan on making over here, I'm going, this isn't good, because even against the sterling in the UK, it's gone down. So what can we do to make the dollar great again? Because if the dollar isn't great, then people aren't going to be able to buy goods in the United States because it's going to be more expensive, and people aren't going to be able to travel, and they aren't going to be able to afford to live overseas what they do. So what can they do, and why is it going down?
Well, I think the primary reason that the dollar has been going down, and the primary reason that gold and silver are up significantly, even though they're down significantly on Friday and today, but still way up from where they were a year ago, is because the lack of confidence in the ability of the federal government here in the United States to be able to put its finances in order. I think that's the primary thing. The Fed enabled irresponsible fiscal policy by keeping rates too low, too long, and it was slow at raising the rates. And President Trump calls the current Fed chair too late, if you will, and they were in that regard. But the simple fact of the matter is that the Fed, can only do so much. And every Fed chair back to Greenspan has talked about the fact that the Congress needs to put our fiscal policy in order, which is tax and spending policy. And if the Congress doesn't put our fiscal in order, then we're going to continue to see an erosion in confidence. We're going to continue to see higher interest rates than necessary, and a decline in the dollar over time. So it's the things we've been talking about for a while that need to be done. And unfortunately, there's an election every 2 years, and people tend to be more concerned about the election, which is more short-term oriented, than they do, the next generation.
Okay, let's go to Canada and find out what the Canadian perspective is, since we have Sasha Starr here, and it looks like the neighbors to the north are in a bit of a tizzy with the U.S. What does Canada have to say about what's going on here?
Well, let's start, for example, with the purchase of American F-35 jet fighters. It's a pretty big order, and after Trump's tariffs policies, Canada is canceling any further purchases of U.S. hardware, and instead they're buying from Sweden their fighters Gripen, which are very sophisticated machines. Furthermore, they will be produced and manufactured in Canada. So Canada will create more working places, and financially it's a much better deal with F-35. And Canada is not the only one who's dropping purchases of American military equipment. It's European Union, almost all countries, and I don't know about Asian and other markets, but I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the same thing. So, the U.S. is, as I said before, is losing its soft power badly, really. And in fact, that will affect the economic power, because if more and more entities, countries, will refuse to purchase American goods. So you understand now what's happening with the American economy, what's happened with the US dollar, et cetera, et cetera. And then now we're coming to certain things which has nothing really to do with the economy. But for example, if you take Trump Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, okay, that has been shut down for 2 years because all the concerts and everything was canceled. Nobody wants to do anything with Trump Kennedy center or not center, or just anything to do with the name of Trump. It's very clear. And this is not something to do with foreign powers or conspiracies or anything. It's Trump himself did. I would be very curious to find, David, your comment on that.
All right, David, you're up.
Well, Trump evidently did not learn the lesson that my mother taught me, and that is engage brain before mouth is in motion.
Mhm.
Trump has the largest ego of anybody I've ever seen in my life. Trump is the most overexposed individual, I would argue, than anybody in the history of mankind. Okay, and he likes to get things named after him. Okay, it's not just the Kennedy Trump Center, which my personal view is that was totally inappropriate. But it's the Trump accounts, which are the new accounts for newborns. It's the Trump class of battleship, which is supposed to fire hypersonic weapons, which we don't have. And frankly, the last thing we need is a battleship. They are called targets with total visibility above the surface. Doesn't make any sense at all. At the same point in time, in some areas, Trump gets results. I mean, the area that he's gotten the best results are the border. I mean, the border is secure. There's no question about it. Didn't take
Really?
legislation.
I'm prepared to challenge you, David.
Okay, well, all right.
He hasn't finished any wars. In fact, situation is getting more and more dangerous.
Well, we have Jacoby McDuffie who's going to come in to defend the United
There's
States.
a difference between whether the border is secure and whether or not the operations associated with deportations and how it's being handled by ICE, whether or not that's appropriate. I think the border is secure. Secondly, I do think that that ICE has not handled its responsibilities in an appropriate way, and I think there needs to be a change in course. At the same point in time, I also think it's a shared responsibility between the federal officials and the state and local officials, because there ought to be cooperation from all levels of law enforcement, federal, state, and local. And in a vast majority of the country, the answer to that is yes, there is, and there's not a problem. But in sanctuary states and sanctuary cities, it's a problem. And that needs to be dealt with one way or the other. But go ahead, Sasha. You said you.
We were going to bring in Jacoby to defend the
Jacoby.
United States of America and Donald Trump. So Jacoby, defend.
I know. I don't. You may be waiting
Motherfucker, who is it?
to hear that.
Just a quick couple of things. Technically, the border is still the border. Yes, there haven't been as many crossings. However, there's not been any legislation to actually lock in the border. So it's not really, it's more so the tactics, which are deterring people, which also is deterred tourism, which is also down, which is killing the tourism market. And we might end up losing the World Cup to Canada and Mexico due to the fact of what's going on around immigration. We don't know what's going to happen with the Olympics based on what's going on with immigration as well. So we have less border crossings, but the border crossings were going down, have been going down for a very long time. Well, not very long time, but yes, they started going down up under Biden, when we had the peak that happened under Biden, but then they started tremendously dropping. They were low when Trump took office. And yes, they went even lower under Trump. So if we want to say that's border security, but there's no legislation, so therefore it's not really even secure. So we don't have an immigration policy. Till we have an immigration policy or a border policy, it's still the same as it was before. The one thing that I want to get back to, because I think, Dave, you brought up earlier in terms of the monetary policy, one thing that you gave a good representation about what was going on about the dollar value, but the dollar devaluation, why can we not put that on Trump? Because under Trump, this time the dollar has been devalued, or in 2025 it dropped 10%. That was the largest drop since he was there the first time. So it's not like he's doing anything good. When he came in the office, the actual economy was doing well, and the dollar value wasn't dropping the way that as it has, based on just the actual numbers. So why can we not say the devaluation of the dollar is due to what Trump is doing and pursuing? The Congress is out of it. They're just doing whatever Trump says. So right now, because of the instability in the market, the chaos that he's causing, why can't we put that on Trump?
All right. Well, several things. One, let's separate between border security and immigration reform. The border was not secure under Biden. Millions of people crossed illegally and were released into the country. Those are facts. And the reason that it went down in the last year during Biden is because it became an election issue. And that's why they started focusing on it somewhat. Secondly, Biden claimed that he had to have legislation in order to secure the border, which was total BS. You didn't need legislation. On the other hand, I totally agree with you that we need comprehensive immigration reform, which will require legislation, and we ought to be focusing on that sooner rather than later. And it ought to be based upon the macroeconomic needs of the country and a variety of other factors that right now our immigration policy is not based on, if you will. But on economic statistics, look, I'm not, a Trump fan. Okay, I like some results in some areas, but I'm not MAGA. Okay, but the fact is, economic growth is up, inflation is down, real wages are up. So economic statistics in the short term are good. But what's not is the thing I came back to before. The fiscal situation has not gotten better under Trump, but the fiscal situation started deteriorating dramatically in 2003, and every president since 2003 has made things worse. Every president. And in fact, the debt to GDP ratio went up more under Obama than anybody else since 2003. So the bottom line is, this is a shared responsibility between several presidents, including Trump. In addition to that, it's a shared responsibility for both political parties in Congress. None of them have taken this seriously enough, and we're going to pay a price if we don't start taking it more seriously.
Well, the reason I have to push back just a tad bit,
Sure.
is and the immigration thing isn't what we're talking about today, because that's a whole different animal. So we'll stay on the economy. The reason I have to push
economic implications, it has major economic, but I hear you. I agree.
Yeah. Immigration definitely has major implications. Immigration is the kicking out of individuals and so on and so forth. As I pointed out, the tourism is down. That's hurting
I understand.
homes of states. So all that, but rather than going down that path, to get back to the actual numbers, inflation right now, according to the statistics, is sitting at 2.6. Last year, it actually went
2.7.
Well, 2.7. He took office,
and it was 3% when he took office.
He took office
5% during the last administration. It went up over 20%.
What was it? It was 2.7 on election day. It was
3%.
It was 2.7 when he took.
They only do it once a month, and it was 3%. Yeah, go ahead.
Essentially it was 2.7. Right now it's 2.6. So what I'm saying is, And even last year, it began to rise because once he took office, inflation went up. So also foreclosure in terms of bankruptcies and store closings, we're at the highest we've had in decades. So we're losing jobs, we're losing businesses. This is the economy or economic pieces that we're ignoring, because again, when we're talking about the economy, we're talking about these rant and raving things. We go to the stock market quickly and talk about how the highs and all this and that.
I don't think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and I agree, because we're sitting at a K-shaped economy where inflation has harmed the lower to middle class, or the middle to lower class. It has harmed a ton of people where the expenses are getting higher, beef at higher prices and all this other stuff at high prices, energy at a higher price than it was when he took office. So groceries at a higher price than it was when he took office.
Whoa, hold on. The only area where the numbers are definitely worse than he took office is unemployment. Okay?
No, energy, we've looked it up.
Hold on. You're making a very broad statement where if you break it down, it's not true. Crude oil prices are down significantly. Gas is down, okay? Let me tell you what's up. What's up is electric rates, okay? But if you look at electric rates, you have to divide that based upon states. For example, there are many states. I moved from Connecticut to Virginia. The electric rates in Connecticut are almost double what they are in Virginia, and they've continued to go up. And the reason being is because there are certain states that have not achieved a reasonable balance between energy production and environmental concerns, and they end up having to import energy at the peak demand, which you end up having to pay a lot more for. I mean, the electric rates to a great extent are dependent upon what the policies are in the individual states. They vary dramatically. That's not
Dave.
That's
Dave,
the state.
All right.
What I'm stating to you is that if energy is higher,
Yeah.
and you're saying that, we have to. It is.
Not
On
for
average,
gas,
it is
not for
higher.
gas.
All right.
But even more so, right now, for example, in North Carolina, we are sitting in a deep freeze.
Yeah, so
Natural gas is higher.
yeah.
So when we're talking, and now you're acknowledging that natural gas is higher, electricity is higher. Those are two energy sources that we mainly depend
I know,
on.
but it's not gas. It's not all energy sources, is all I'm saying.
You're pigeonholing it to me driving a car.
Yeah.
All right. I want to mention. Hold on. I want to mention one other
We
thing.
can bring those numbers in from Sierra Week coming up in about a month. I'll be attending, and we can bring the real numbers up, not the ones that you're getting sidelined by some media source or someone who doesn't even attend the meetings through the year. We'll bring it to you. So, but as a personal out of pocket experience, I believe that the energy costs have gone up, but that's from personal pocket energy. I do have some questions, but I'm not in line right now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up, let's wait until Sierra Week and get the real data. So
Yeah, well, I'm getting mine from the U.S. government, but in any event,
don't trust me.
There's no question. And these are career officials, not political people. There's no question that electric rates have gone up. No ifs, ands, or buts, and that's something that everybody has to have. And there's no question that natural gas has gone up. There's no question about that. I'm just saying that gasoline to fuel your car has gone down. So some have gone up, some have gone down.
But the main
everybody needs it.
But the main
Hold on.
are gas and electricity.
What about trade deficit? Let's talk about. So after
Down significantly.
down significantly, I've seen
Trade deficit.
But I've seen that it's up 4% over the previous year.
I've got the monthly trade deficit. Was what month are you going by, Rick?
I was going year over year, which is there was 1 month where it was down, and there was 1 month where it popped up hugely, like November by 98. But I don't think you can. I think it's better to look at the whole year.
I got to go year to year, right? Through October, which is what I have, it was down significantly, but maybe it's gone up in the last couple.
It popped up by like 98% in November, so that it's over for the year. It is now up 4% over year. But the deal is that pissing off the whole rest of the world was not worth it. That it really didn't fix the trade deficit. And I want to talk about Trump versus Kennedy for a second. And Trump, there's a saying that I like: all hat, no cattle. That we'd be happier putting Trump's name on stuff if he was less of a dick in other areas. And Kennedy had the good manners to get assassinated while he was still young and good looking. Kennedy would have probably turned out to be a mediocre president. That he was going to get us deeper into Vietnam. Lyndon Johnson inexplicably decided to honor Kennedy, who he didn't even like, decided to take up the civil rights mantle. Would Kennedy have done as good a job as Johnson did? I don't know. But Kennedy, we can imagine him being great because we never got a chance to see reality play out. Also, Obama, in his insistence on staying calm and classy and refusing to fight dirty, meant that he got played by the Republicans a frickin' lot, like Merrick Garland. Obama could have played dirty to get Garland onto the Supreme Court, but he backed away. And so, okay, that's all I got.
Well, I would say I don't like Trump's style at all. At all. I think it's very unpresidential. So I think we can probably agree on that.
I have a financial question.
Hey, David. Hey, everybody.
Hi, Steve. Hi. Again, happy Groundhog Day, everyone. He saw his shadow, and it's going to be bundle up for a couple more weeks. But my question to you, Dave, is Trump has been known repeatedly to say recently that he wants to see the housing rate stay up and continue to get up, and the interest rates to drop. What do you see this doing to our economy? How is that going to fix things? Because I think that's one of the reasons why he picked Ken Wash. I found it surprising that his name was in the Epstein files. No, I didn't. But what is the impact to the economy if we do something like what Trump has been talking about?
Well, I'm not sure what you're saying. First, he obviously wants rates to come down. He wants, including mortgage rates, right? But mortgage rates are affected more by what the 10-year rate is, not by what the short-term rate is. The Fed only controls the short-term rate. Anything beyond the short-term rate is controlled by auctions. There might be some psychological impact to reducing the short-term rate somewhat more, which is what Trump wants. But I think the biggest problem with the longer-term rates is people are losing confidence in our ability to put our finances in order.
Well, I agree with you, but this is what he's saying.
Well, hold on. Well, that doesn't mean it's true. The other thing that's happening is several people have made the comment about how we're losing some tourism and we're losing some some sales, with regard to F-35s or whatever else, if you will. Could be in part because of an adverse reaction to the tariffs and rhetoric that Trump has said. We're also losing the willingness of some historical purchasers of our debt to buy our debt. For example, the Netherlands has announced that they're not going to buy any more of our debt. They can't dump it, but they can reduce their appetite. So that's an issue that would affect auctions with regard to supply and demand, and therefore could affect what the rates are that we'll end up having to pay for longer term debt. Right now, a vast majority of our debt is short term, which means that if you can end up getting the short term rate down, it'll help in the short term. But on the other hand, you don't have a lot of people who want to buy our long term debt. because we haven't put our finances in order. So I come back to the fact that we need to put our finances in order, and Trump's not taking steps to be able to do that. Nor did the past president, nor has any president since 2003.
So
Hey,
Trump,
David, just really
Clinton
quickly.
did a fabulous job. Not that I like him, but I think he did a fabulous job. But do you believe that any of the positive impact that you claim we have, does it outweigh the negative that we're riding on right now? Does any of the positive impact outweigh the negative that we're having to deal with, and the loss of lives and the authoritarian behaviors? Does it outweigh it or not?
Well, you have to be more specific, Kim, about what issues. I mean, I've already said
We're positive. We're positive. Yeah.
I've already said that I believe that things have to change with regard to the deportation process. Okay, and I believe that that ICE's tactics, and to the extent that CBP is involved, they need to change. They need to focus on individuals who either domestically or internationally have been convicted of serious crimes. That's what they need to focus on. Not people who've come here illegally across the board, if you will. But I also noted that there needs to be cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement officials. And in a vast majority of the country, there is. And we don't have the kind of problems that you see in Minneapolis. In the case of Minnesota, in the case of Minneapolis, they're both sanctuary cities, and the leaders of the state and the city are advocating for protest or advocating for people to get upset about what's going on, and they're not allowing the police forces to be able to do their job. Okay.
Isn't that our right as an American to advocate for ourselves?
You can advocate, but you cannot obstruct. Okay. And how you advocate is different. If you start trying to interfere with law enforcement, that is not a protected right under the First Amendment. If you try,
I want to get back to economics.
I agree.
Hold on. Trump.
if you try to start interrupting religious services, that is not a protected right under the First Amendment. Period.
Well, I agree
Look,
with that.
I want to talk about Trump. Trump thinks he's an economist, and he's not.
He's not.
Trump has this idea that sounds like a great idea initially to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. But somebody pointed out that if you do that, that means credit card companies aren't going to issue many credit cards, because what makes credit card companies love to issue credit is the chance that you'll get behind and they'll be able to charge you 20%. So capping the interest rate will screw some people. Also, 12,000 houses burned down in LA, and it's been a year. And LA is really pokey about issuing permits to let you start building. And Trump wants to get in there and okay all these permits. The trouble is, if you okay 12,000 permits without looking at them, then we will repeat a disaster in 10 years. Those same ill-built houses will burn again.
Quite possible. I think we have Mark next, and then I guess we have Jatovi. So, Mark.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the building and all along those lines, because you said that Trump is pushing building, and yeah, there's not just Trump, but others are as well. But I'm wondering, aren't we getting to the point where we're building too much and not necessarily having the infrastructure for what we're building? Because that's what I'm afraid of, even here in Durham, where I'm at. I'm seeing a lot of buildings going up, but they are at, like, in some cases 25% occupancy, in some cases even probably less than that. So you still got to upkeep those buildings and all along those lines. So David, what is your thoughts on that? Because that's one of my fears. And by the way, I will forgive you for wearing that Notre Dame shirt, because you know that was our major rival again when I was a Marquette person back in the 80s. So I will forgive you for wearing that Notre Dame shirt.
Well, thank you, but I am a practicing Roman Catholic, and I have lectured at Notre Dame, so that's why I have this on. Although I will note that my true allegiance is to Alabama, and the last time Alabama played Notre Dame, we beat them for the national championship. But that's a different story. Look, the issue you're talking about is really a local issue. All right. I will, however, say that permitting reform is both federal, state, and local. And that is on the agenda on a bipartisan basis of some members of Congress. From the standpoint of the national angle, the biggest issue they're dealing with is something we talked about before, and that is energy. To try to be able to accelerate the ability to access energy, to be able to accelerate the ability to transmit energy through pipelines and things of that nature. At the same point in time, there are issues at the state and local level with regard to permitting. The example that you gave and that Rick gave earlier is, how long does it take to get a dang permit in order to build something or to rebuild something? It takes way too long. Although, and that's something that really is not appropriate to be handled at the federal level, but it clearly needs to be handled at the state and local level. For the federal government to get into it, it needs to be interstate commerce. It needs to have some implications for interstate commerce. Yeah.
Mark, we're going.
Mark, you mentioned
One
the
follow-up
building.
question. I can see where
Wait.
Nick, why don't you quarterback this? We got
We need to go.
So I just want to say, Mark mentioned building, and the entire South, the west of the Mississippi, the U.S. is mostly empty and can sustain a lot of building except for water. The west of the U.S. only has the Colorado River, and that is completely oversubscribed. We need 3 Colorado rivers or more. If somebody can figure out how to make water out of nothing or out of seawater or something in a cheap way, then we could go crazy building. We could, instead of kicking out immigrants, we could just set them to work building, and we could solve the housing crisis. But it depends on water and it depends on energy. And we don't have enough of either, especially with AI coming in to chew up all these resources.
We need to go.
Decolonization, okay, but we also don't have the infrastructure in the West either. But go ahead.
Yeah, one of the big issues is it's so good to see David Walker. I got to go real quickly. I got to leave, but it's just so good to see everybody. David, great to see you.
Good to
I'm
see
going
you.
to follow up with you on some other stuff, but I'm
All
so
right.
busy with my campaign. But I'm real quickly before Jacoby, and I've got to run. Kimberly, it's great to see you. As it relates to infrastructure, one thing that we have a problem with here in Wake County is data centers. And 100,000 ChatGPT searches daily can consume enough electricity for 30,000 households, and then you got the water usage requirement. And so you talk about infrastructure. I mean, nobody's really talking about AI energy strategy. And so I'm the only one that answered the question right during the Sierra Club interview because I knew it. I've been studying it and following it. But anyway, I think infrastructure is a huge issue, and the Democrats didn't really have a lot of success getting the infrastructure built. I mean, a lot of promises made by Biden, but 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. I think they only built 10. 200 million is supposed to have broadband connection. We only did 10 million. I mean, we have a lot of great parties as Democrats, but then we don't see the infrastructure come in. I think the last president that had major infrastructure came in was Roosevelt. So anyway, I just wanted to send that.
I would say Eisenhower.
Eisenhower.
Interstate highway system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm proud of wearing my New York Times cap. My daughter's a journalist at New York Times, so
Really?
Sonia Rao. She's writing on the national news desk now, so we're excited.
Well, okay. We have Jacoby and then Dr. Sharif.
I guess what we're all talking about going through infrastructure, everything else, it also boils back to, I guess, Dave, what we weren't going to talk about, immigration, because roughly about 1 in 4 in construction are immigrants. You can go from 30% all the way up to 60%, all throughout construction. That's your infrastructure. That's dealing with your house supply. That's not the complaint always gets to be, oh, well, immigrants are taking the house. You're driving. That's a lie. But what's the problem is the house supply, and those building the homes, 1 in 4 are immigrants. So I think, and that's dealing with data centers, that's dealing with the pipelines, that's dealing with the construction, everything. The immigration policy, I guess, because we didn't want to talk about it, and it's still on economics, but we're now here. How much do you think that is truly affecting all of it? Since
I think it's a big issue. Let me start at the top. Okay. First, we need a national human capital strategy. The most valuable asset we have is human capital. And a national human capital strategy involves education, immigration, labor policy, tax policy, I can go on. All right. From an immigration standpoint, we need to learn some lessons from others. We need to determine what are the macroeconomic needs of our nation. What kind of workforce do we need? To the extent that we don't have an adequate number of people in the United States for that, then our immigration policy needs to be adjusted accordingly. In an area, for example, like construction that you talk about, there are a lot of non-Native Americans that are here. Some are legal, some are not. By the way, you're not supposed to hire illegals. It's illegal to hire illegals, but people still do it because we don't enforce the law. My personal view is that we need to recognize that there needs to be a difference between legal and illegal immigration. There needs to be a difference between a pathway to citizenship and a pathway to long-term legal status versus short-term legal status. We ought to be having a situation where employers can sponsor people to be in this country legally, to be able to meet certain economic needs that we have in this country that are legitimate. But we also need to crack down on people who aren't following the law. Okay, I'm talking about employers who aren't following the law. Okay, so to me, it isn't that complicated. I mean, there is a way to solve this problem, but it starts with the macroeconomic needs and recognizing that there needs to be a difference between a pathway to citizenship and a pathway to long-term legal status and a pathway to temporary, like work permits and things of that nature, to be able to meet different needs at different times of the year. For example, agriculture. We need a lot of people for agriculture at certain times of the year, but not at other times of the year. And in many cases, we have people who want to come here to work. They want to come here and work during a period of time and then go back home. And we ought to recognize that reality. I mean, it isn't that complicated. It really ticks me off that we've had decades where we haven't made any real progress on this. It's not only a human issue, it's an economic issue. It's a major economic issue.
We have a really clever way of solving our infrastructure problems, and that is microplastics. Microplastics get into men's bodies, and they have been lowering testosterone levels by 1% a year for the past 40 years. So now we have a baby shortage. If our population starts shrinking, we need less infrastructure, and it's shrinking because guys don't want to bang anymore because they're losing testosterone.
Only Rick would know those stats, but let's go to Dr. Sharif, who heads the World Talent Economic Forum.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that last comment, but go ahead, Dr. Sharif.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to share some information. Like I see that there are a lot of discussions with data and information. I took this point, this macro initiative and micro initiative. In terms of my statistical views and data, I'm observing U.S. national debt, $38 trillion. Debt as percentage of GDP is a 119%. Net interest payment, $841 billion last 10 months, according to Deloitte. Government shutdown, GDP lose around $55 billion. Weekly shutdown cost around plus minus $7 billion. Global dollar demand is increasing. And I just want to share good news that Bangladesh Central Bank, they are a good ally for Bangladesh, a good ally for USA, and they are buying dollar. I think few $1 billion they buy, and even last month they buy around $55 million. So this is the way Bangladesh is supporting to US dollar and other things. But here is my question. The last week, we do a symposium in between India, Bangladesh, USA, and Australia. What it called this climate impact, and what I'm discussing the long times, what I'm observing, definitely Honorable David Walker always say, USA do not have strategy or long-term plan a real plan. And from my World Talent Economic Forum with Himalaya, with Ganga, with Bay of Bengal, with this Podda and Bay of Bengal, I say that around 600 million people, 1/10 of the global population live in this region. And we are planning for $1 trillion economy, but definitely we are welcoming many scientists and inventors from Silicon Valley, from Stanford, from NASA, from India, from Bangladesh. But we are observing that China, they have long-term plan with this South Asia, with this Africa, with Asia Pacific, with South America. They are heavily investing in this kind of countries, like country like Bangladesh or India and these places. And it's $1 trillion economy in a long run, and with a proper plan. I already shared these things with the POT TV, and you can see all of the brilliant things happening in between our ecosystem. On the other hand, USA has a lot of expert, lot of talent, lot of innovations, but government has lack of our awareness, lack of policy, lack of long-term innovations and strategy. I think, honestly speaking, this is my observations from Asia, USA losing. And according to Adam Smith, like this Silk Route, you can see this Asia, this China, this India, this Middle East, and this Africa has the route Silk Route, and then China come with this Silk Route 2.0 with all of the infrastructure and other things, and China basically gaining a lot. If you compare this Chinese the present economic status and this US present economic status, China is a much more bigger position and a good position because of their sovereign, because of their long-term plan. And with the immigration policy, with this, I don't know, make America great again. I do not know it's make America great again or what. But strategically, global arena, China, USA losing their positions. And maybe Asia will rise when like USA trying to isolate themselves, isolate their border, isolate with their economic activities and so on. This is my statistical report, and all of the TV producers and my colleague, you can see our Himalaya, Ganga, Podda, and Bay of Bengal economic strategy. We are producing with the scientists of USA. We are a good ally of USA. But honestly speaking, USA have a lot of talent. USA policy has problem. Politician has problem. They have lack of understanding about the global community. Thank you. I think we can learn a lot of things.
First, thank you, Doctor. First, let me say, I do not agree with the saying, make America great again. What I believe is appropriate is to keep America great. America is great, but we're slipping. And you must have read my latest book, Doctor, because one of the major points that I made in the book is the United States federal government, despite having a law that says it's supposed to have one, does not have a future-focused, integrated, resource-constrained, and outcome-based strategic plan about what is it trying to accomplish from an economic standpoint, from a national security standpoint, from a foreign policy standpoint, from a domestic policy standpoint. It doesn't have one. China has one, and they are executing on it. Without a plan, all you have is prayer. Don't get me wrong, I'm for prayer, but I'm for prayer and a plan. And you know, we are a superpower today, but we're at risk because we don't have a plan that we're executing on, and because we're losing control of our finances. And if you don't put your finances in order, then you will end up having an adverse impact economically, diplomatically, militarily, and domestic tranquility wise. And so I come back to, we've got a lot of challenges, we got a lot of opportunities, but we need to focus on getting our act together with regard to planning, executing, and putting our finances in order.
So Trump, first, go, Steve, go ahead.
No, I just want to thank David Walker for that great. I love that. Keep America great again. And I think we need to be the place where the best and brightest minds come to the world. And immigrants have produced a lot for America, but I think we have to balance it with those that are coming here illegally. David, thank you so much. And I appreciate all of you. I got to run, but it's always great to be here for the hour with David Walker. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Steve.
But
Thank you.
mostly we've been losing time, especially to China. Trump's first administration, it didn't make progress anywhere, and with COVID, it cost us a lot. Then Biden was an unremarkable caretaker president who spent a couple of years mopping up the damage, but didn't move a lot of stuff forward. And now we're back to Trump, who's this time is completely unrestrained and is tearing up a bunch of shit. He might get some stuff right, but he's just throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall president.
Sasha.
Another thing I just want to add from our symposium, what we identify, present American government is a denial of climate change. China taking the leads through United Nations, through this green energy, through this water resource management, through the huge population of Asia Pacific. They are bringing all of the infrastructure and other things. And as Trump or his friend and his ally is a denial of climate change, he is losing this business, and this is very clear. So even at some point, Honorable David Walker said this is only three years. Then Trump will go on and new things happening. But honestly speaking, I'm afraid in between 3 years, because I'm also a good friend of Americans, maybe China will take all of the leading positions of economics and empowerment, and USA may losing all of the things because of their isolation, because of their immigration policy and lack of long-term policy. Thank you.
David, I have one question to you. If you would written this book, if America will be a superpower by the 2040, would you write this book today?
You are asking me?
Well, no, yeah, I mean, yeah, because the answer to the question is, Sasha, is the answer of will it be a superpower in 2040? It's not certain at this point, okay? Because we're not doing some of the things I'm talking about. If we do some of the things that I'm talking about, the answer will unquestionably be yes. If we don't do some of the things that I'm talking about, then we may not be, okay? But understand this, China has a much bigger demographic problem than we do, okay? And China is no leader on environmental sustainability. I mean, and one of the real challenges that we have is that only we can put our finances in order. Nobody else can. But in the case of environmental sustainability, every major country has to be part of it, because clean air, clean water do not respect geopolitical boundaries. We can do everything that's possible, but if others don't do their part, we can't solve the problem.
With the super cold weather everywhere, are there still people fighting for the global warming?
Yeah, there's a complete.
I'm looking for some global warming today.
Well, it's warm here in Spain, and we have to go. So,
I can explain.
the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, our listeners in the United States and around the world, especially in Bangladesh, where we get our traditional 170 million views. And we'll see you next time on Economics with the Honorable David M.